stole my mic. He's done a great job. And Susie, I want to thank you. So was this really a surprise? Because they said this is going to be a surprise. Young Republicans. Joe Mitchell's a fantastic guy, the job he's done. Do you know Joe? You better know Joe. If you don't know Joe, he'll be very upset. That would be a horror. Supposing they said, no, who is he? That would not be good, Joe, right? Well, you know, I got up and they said, sir, you'll have some protesters outside that we're going to have protesters from Nikki's campaign. You know, she's got a lot of enthusiasm. So I go down to the elevator. I'm all set. I'm going to walk right through those protesters. There was one person. Hi, Mr. Trump. Oh, I'm sorry, President Trump. He goes, hi. I said, he's the nicest protester I've ever seen. There was one person. They organized that for about 2 weeks. So let's see what happens. And I hear you're going to have cold weather. And I said, is that good or bad? He said, that's good for us. It's not good for them. But our people will walk through glass. That's what Joe just told me, and I think it's true. So we have to win this election. What happened last time was a disgrace. We got 12 million more votes than we got just before. We ran a better campaign in many ways, I guess, a better campaign. We got many more votes, and we just have to be very careful. COVID was a horrible thing for many reasons, but also for elections, and the things they did were horrible. They'll cheat, they'll steal, they'll do whatever they have to do. Disgraceful, actually, but we're going to do it. We're going to win a third time, and we're going to bring our country back like never before. Right now, what's happening at the border, what's happening with inflation. They think that inflation's coming down. Well, they're up almost 30%, so that's not coming down, and it's very tragic when you see what's happened to our country. Ukraine would have never been attacked ever, not even a chance, by Russia. That wouldn't have happened. Think of it. That wouldn't have happened. Israel wouldn't have been attacked by Hamas. You know, Iran was broke when I was there. I said, anybody buys oil from Iran, they can't do business with the United States. That was the end of that business for them. And they were literally broke. And Biden came in and he just took off all the sanctions, took off all that talk. And now China's, getting millions of barrels a week. Everybody is. But I spoke with China. I spoke with everybody, but I remember specifically with France. I said, you can't buy there. You can't buy oil. And if you do, it's okay, but you're just not doing, nobody's doing business with us if they do. And they were literally broke. They didn't have money for Hamas. They didn't have money for Hezbollah. They didn't have money to fight a war or to hand out money. And I don't know if you remember that period of time, but everybody was complaining, like in that world, that there's no money coming out of Iran anymore because they didn't have any money. And I would have treated them very fairly, but I also would have said one thing: you can't have a nuclear weapon. Now I hear 31 days away from getting a nuclear weapon. Once they have that, it's a whole different ballgame. It's a whole different ballgame. And we have a man, he can't put two sentences together. He can't speak. Although yesterday he tried to play tough guy. I'm a threat to democracy. He's a threat to democracy because he's incompetent. He's incompetent. And a lot of people said, that's going to be their theme, that I'm a threat to democracy. They're screwing with our elections. They're doing things that nobody's ever done before in terms of weaponization with DOJ, with FBI. I got indicted more than Al Capone. You don't know. You're too young to know Al. Do you know Alphonse Capone with the Scarface? You ever hear of the movie Scarface? This was a seriously tough guy. He got indicted fewer than me. And I got indicted very quickly. Boom, boom, boom. I talked about the election. Oh, gee, you're not allowed to do that. Every Democrat, they're still talking about 2016. So these are bad people we're dealing with, very bad people. And it came out loud and clear. They can't talk about anything else. He can't talk about it because he's got no achievements. What does he have? He's got the worst border in history. He has a terrible economy that's inflation-ridden, that if you take off inflation, the economy's a disaster. You deduct inflation. And I think you can say this, and a lot of people are saying it, the only reason the stock market's good is people think I'm going to win because I'm leading in all the polls. And if I win, the stock market is good. The stock market was great with me, but more importantly, the economy was great. The real economy, I call it the real economy, was great. But if we don't win, I predict, I hope this wouldn't be true. First of all, we got to win. But if we don't win, I predict that you'll have a depression the likes of we had in 1929, because these people are crazy. They're spending money like drunken sailors. Nobody's ever seen them. Nobody's ever seen anything like what they're doing. $9 trillion on the Green New Scam. And no, it's the craziest thing. They got windmills going up. The whales are all fly. We had one whale in 50 years. Now we got like 9 every 3 months or something, So it's doing something. They said, oh, maybe it's not the windmills. It's doing something. That noise goes down there. Those whales are getting crazy. But it's so bad. It's so bad for everything. The wind is a rough one because it kills all your birds. It's the most expensive energy you can get. It's intermittent. I used to joke, you remember? I'd say, oh, we want to watch the president on television tonight. He's in a debate. And the husband would say, I'm sorry, Sarah, the wind isn't blowing. I don't believe we'll be able to get any electric tonight. We're not going to be able to watch our president. And people got a kick out of it, but it's true. It's very intermittent. It's very expensive, extremely expensive. And then they have other forms of energy. And then what they want to do is put all electric cars, which don't go far, which are a basic disaster. But if you want to buy one, that's okay. But if you want to, drive down to the local delicatessen, or if you want to drive back and forth from a store because you want to buy new underpants, okay? That's for the guys. The women are a little bit different. But if you want to drive down to the store to buy clothing, or if you want to do something locally, it's fine. But these cars don't go very far. And, if you say, gee, let's drive to Idaho. Let's get some beautiful potatoes in Idaho. It's not going to work out too well because you'll have to stop about 6 times. And it's just crazy what they're doing. And, the gas stoves they're going to take away. And all of that stuff will be gone the first day because it's an executive order. The one good thing about an executive order is you can terminate it immediately. And he basically only gets executive orders because that's all he can get. He can't get anything much through Congress. But he gets executive orders and he just signs them. But that's both good and bad because when we do it, we want to keep it. But we did things like Right to Try, where you have incredible space age, unbelievable cures, medical cures, that people would be terminally ill and they'd go to Asia, they'd go to Europe, they'd go all over the planet to try. If they had no money, they'd go home and they'd die. And now we're able to use things that won't be approved for 5 or 6 years, but we think they work well. And we've saved thousands and thousands of lives all over this country, and actually beyond the country. But lives all over this country have been saved with Right to Try. We rebuilt our military. We got the largest tax cuts in the history of our country, larger than even the Reagan cuts. He gave a big tax cut. We got substantially larger. In your territory, if most of you, a lot of you are from Iowa, but a lot of you are involved with farms and small businesses, you have no estate tax or death tax, as we call it. I got that in the tax bill. So I always say when the parents die, if they love their children, they leave them and there's no tax to pay. They used to lose the farms because they'd have to go out and borrow vast amounts of money. And they'd borrow from the banks, and 2 years later, 3 years later, they'd get foreclosed. They'd lose the farm in many cases. It's a tremendous percentage of cases because the estate taxes are very high, over 50%. And now you pay nothing for that. And you have a farm, you have a small business, you pay nothing, which is a very big deal, which nobody talks about. But I talk about it because I think it's great. I always joke, if you don't love your children, don't listen because it's just a waste of words. You're not going to care. But that, and you have a farm, you have a small business, you pay nothing, which is a very big deal, which nobody talks about. But I talk about it because I think it's great. I always joke, if you don't love your children, don't listen because it's just a waste of words. You're not going to care. But if you love your children, they're not going to have to pay estate taxes, and that's a big deal. So we did a lot of things. We did, I would say, just about more. We're getting credit for having really a great administration. We had the greatest economy in history. We had the safest border in history. Our border was so safe that we couldn't even talk about it in the 2020 election. I took it over, and if you remember in 2016, I talked nothing but border, safety, security, border. And in 2020, even though we got, millions more votes than we did in 2016, which is a thing that I always say, we did actually much better. We got 12 million more votes. But in 2020, if you think, I couldn't talk about the border. I said, but I want to talk about the border. And these geniuses over here, some of them here, some of them are back because they've heard this before. So they figured they'll go back and do something. But all of my great geniuses said, sir, I'm sorry, you can't talk about the border because you fixed it. It's totally fixed. And I noticed that when I used to get standing ovations when I mentioned the border. And then in 2020, I got no ovations. I said, the border is fixed. Oh, because they took it for granted. I said, this isn't right. I said, maybe I shouldn't have fixed it. I should have taken it nice and easy. But now I get, I've never seen anything like it, because this is what's happened right now is an invasion of our country by almost a military force. You could say maybe worse. We're losing through the border. We're losing, I think 300,000 people a year. They like to say 90, and it's been 90 for about 20 years, right? They just keep saying 90. I think the numbers are much, and families are being destroyed. You all know people with somebody who's either been lost or very, very sick with drug addiction and drug abuse, and most of that comes right through the southern border. For the most part, the southern border. The northern border is not so hot either. They're starting to use that, but now they went back. They started to use it a little bit with me, and we shut it off because they couldn't get through the southern border. But now they're all back at the southern border because all you have to do is walk into the country, and that's it. You walk in like it's not even believable. They just had, I think they said 300,000 people over the last 2 months, which is a number that nobody's ever even heard of. We had it down to almost nothing, and all this guy had to do is go to the beach. He likes the beach. You saw that. He'd go to the beach, he'd sit in the sand, and it didn't. To me, if I was his campaign manager, I wouldn't advise it because he couldn't get his feet out of the sand. He could barely lift his feet. He couldn't lift the chair, which is about 6 ounces. It's meant for a child to lift for their grandparents. And it'd be dragging the chair along. The thing weighs like 6 ounces. It's actually meant for a child to take it for their grandparents. That's what, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I've heard. It sounds good to me, but it's not exactly heavy, and he could barely lift it. And, he'd sit there on the beach. All he had to do, he would have been much more successful as a president, because he's the worst president in history by far, most incompetent, most corrupt. He's the worst president we've ever had. Other than that, I think he's done a very fine job. Do you agree? No, he's the most corrupt president, and he's the worst president we've ever had. I mean, think of it. But you take a look at what he's done. All he had to do is go to the beach and relax. He could read his comic books or whatever the hell he reads, which probably are comic books. He does read strange things because nobody can ever figure out what he's reading. But whatever he's doing, and he would have been very good on the border, because if he would have left Tom home, and if he would have left all of the people that I had on the border, he wouldn't have had to do anything. But instead, he released all of the things that I put into place, which made it impossible, very, very hard for people to come into our country. And we have now an onslaught. We have an invasion. It's an invasion of our country. So this is the most important election we've ever had, and I appreciate your support. And, Joe, I appreciate everything you've done. He's a good real estate developer, I hear, by the way. But I appreciate what you've done very much. See, now, if Biden were up here, let's say this was a Biden and he, came in. Was it a surprise? Did some people know I was coming? No? They said, he said, like that. It's like those surprise birthday parties, we're giving a surprise. But they always know, right? They always know. They always say, I'm not going out. I'm just not going out, darling. Okay, look, let me tell you. It's a surprise. Okay, I'll do that for that. But anyway, whether it was or not, I very much appreciate it. But, I know Joe's name. And could you imagine Biden? They give the name. Because don't forget, there's no notes here. If he had to go back to Joe Mitchell, ladies and gentlemen, he'd say, what's your name again? What is it? Right? You think he'd remember it? No, he wouldn't remember it walking up to the platform, and then he wouldn't know how to get off the platform. It's always dangerous with the fake news media. Is that your media, by the way? That's us? Oh, is that somebody outside? Oh, that's not good, but that's okay. I always assume, because the cameras are always blazing, your cell phones are always blazing anyway, so I always assume it. But whenever I want to be a little bit sarcastic or we'll have a little fun, it's hard to have fun when you have a country like this and where you have wars all over the place, where Viktor Orban, the great leader, very powerful leader, one of the most respected leaders in the world and probably the strongest or one of the strongest. He's hungry. He leads Hungary very strongly. And they said, when Trump was here, there were no conflicts in the world. We had none. We took out ISIS. We did a great job on ISIS. Knocked out Soleimani. We knocked out al-Baghdadi, the founder of ISIS. But we did a great job with ISIS. I did it in 4 weeks. and everybody said it would take 4 years. I did it in 4 weeks. We have a great military, but you have to know the right people, not these guys you see on television that are woke. We don't want to have a woke military, but they're trying to turn it into a woke military. But we have great people and great military, but we knocked out ISIS. We did a fantastic job. And we have the potential to be so great as a country because a lot of people think we've lost it. We can never really be great again. And in many respects, the biggest threat we have is not they're not those opponents or enemies from outside our country. They're the people from within our country. You know, like you look at some of these politicians, these radical left crazy people, all they do is fight. I mean, you spend all your time defending yourself. Russia, Russia, Russia turned out to be a hoax. All of these Ukraine, right, turned out to be just all hoax. In fact, it was worse than a hoax. I was totally right. I got impeached on Ukraine. And by the end of the impeachment, they said, you know, this guy was 100% right. What happened is we turned out, and that was proven when they found the laptop from hell. The laptop from hell. When they found that and they looked at it and they studied it, they said, man, we impeached that guy. He was 100% right. I was 100% right. But you're defending yourself against these maniacs. They're lunatics. And they're more dangerous, in my opinion, to this country than the countries from outside. Because if you have a competent president, you can get along with China. You can keep China at bay. I took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China. Except for COVID, I had a great relationship. But once that happened, it was like that was a step too far. But look at what we did. Look at the economy. Look at what we were doing. I tell you, before, just prior to COVID coming in, they did a poll. John McLaughlin, who's here someplace, the great pollster, and Fabrizio and others, we did a poll that showed that if George Washington and Abraham Lincoln came back from the dead and they ran as president and vice president together, they couldn't beat me. And they ran as president and vice president together, they couldn't beat me. And the following day, I went to the Oval Office. I said, something strange is happening in China, sir. There's dead people all over, and it looks like it could be. They called it a pandemic. We didn't hear the word COVID. You know, China was very, very strong on not calling it the China virus. I'm one of the few remaining people that call it the China virus because I want to be accurate, because everyone's trying to figure out what's COVID. COVID-19. Oh, it's wonderful. You know, its flus are named after certain places, oftentimes, and viruses where they come from. But China didn't like that, and I understand that. But, you know, we want to be accurate after all, because the damage that was done to the world, not just this country, it's $50 trillion worth of damage to the world. And some countries, I mean, they've never recovered from it. And it's, you know, it was a tragedy. It was just a tragedy. But we have a chance, I believe, and I think it's our last chance. I think I'm worried about the next 10 months, to be honest with you, because to allow this incompetent fool to be the president of the United States, we could end up in a third world war. Bad things could happen, really bad things. And one of the things I say is I can make you one promise. You won't end up in a third world war. You won't. And that's based on strength. It's not based on weakness. It's based on strength. As an example, Afghanistan, I think it was the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. We had soldiers killed, 13 killed, many just obliterated that nobody talks about, where they lost arms and legs and their face was just, you know, just so horribly hurt and injured. And nobody ever talks about them. We left Americans behind, many, hundreds, at least hundreds, probably much more than that. They're still behind. They're still there. They're still in Afghanistan. And you take a look, and then we, of course, left $85 billion worth of brand new equipment that I bought. Brand new planes, brand new tanks, brand new. They had 700,000 rifles and guns. They had 70,000 trucks, many of them armor-plated and you know, very expensive, very, very expensive stuff. We left 70,000. Think of a used car lot in Des Moines, okay? Give me your biggest one. What do they have, like 40 or 50 cars, right? 70,000 cars, trucks, vehicles, some of them costing millions of dollars. We left it all behind, and now the Taliban has it. And I don't know if you saw, I saw a report the other day that the second or third largest seller of arms is the Taliban. It's Afghanistan. Because they don't need 700,000 rifles. They need 25,000 rifles. They don't need 70,000 vehicles. They need probably a tiny fraction of that. And what they're doing is selling all that equipment, making an absolute. They're one of the largest arms dealers in the world, and we just handed it to them. We left them everything. These people are grossly incompetent, and 9 months, a little more than 9 months, that is a long period of time. Tremendous damage can be done. You've heard the speech where I say, if you took, I used to say 5, but now I added 5. If you took the 10 worst presidents in the history of our country, the 10 absolute worst, added them together, they haven't done the damage to this country that Joe Biden has done. When you look at the border, when you look at inflation and the economy, and when you look at these wars all over the place. So Viktor Orban said, they asked him what would he do. He said, I'd ask that Donald Trump be installed as president because when he was here, we had no problems. There was no terrorism. There was no problem with Russia. Russia would have never done that. They would have never done it. I knew Putin very well. I got along with him. We were tough on Russia. We stopped the oil pipeline. You know, everyone said, oh, you were so nice. I stopped the pipeline. That was the biggest thing they've ever done. I stopped it. It was dead cold stopped. Nord Stream 2. Nobody ever heard of Nord Stream 2. I said, they're building a pipeline going to Germany and all over Europe. What's that all about? I stopped it. Putin said, if you're friendly, I'd hate to see you when you're not friendly. It was an interesting statement because that was a massive thing. And Biden approved it in his first week. He gave it to Russia. And then they say, he was weak on Russia. They're a party of disinformation. And their new disinformation is that I'm a dictator. And the press, of course, as you know, is really bad. I was doing like a town hall with Sean Hannity a couple of weeks ago. And he said, so you're not a dictator, are you? He said, and you won't be. I said, Sean, I will be a dictator for one day. We're going to close up the border, and we're going to drill, baby, drill. And after that, I will never be a dictator, okay? So remember the words. Those were the words. I will be a dictator for one day. I was kidding, you know, being a little sarcastic. I will be a dictator for one day. And the day was we're going to close up the border and we're going to drill, baby, drill. We're going to become energy independent very quickly. I mean, now we're buying energy from Venezuela, from Iran. We're buying it from Iran. You believe that? But we're buying energy. So I said those two things. But I started the sentence, I will be a dictator for one day. And after that, I won't be a dictator ever again. And so they take my statement and it says, I will be a dictator for, boom, cut. So they cut it. They cut everything out. So they have me say, I will be a dictator. And then they go on the news, the fake news. I don't know who he's from, but the fake news. And they say, Donald Trump has admitted he wants to be a dictator. These people are sick. They cut everything out. So they have me say, I will be a dictator. And then they go on the news, the fake news. I don't know who he's from, but the fake news. And they say, Donald Trump has admitted he wants to be a dictator. These people are sick. And the media is so corrupt and they're so bad. Think of it. And they do that all the time. When I kid, like, you know, this guy can't get off a stage, right? He can't come off a stage. He just can't because he doesn't know what a stare is. He doesn't know what he's doing. And so I joke sometimes. He finishes his speech, you know, which usually lasts very short because, you know, he runs out of fuel, you know, the stuff that he fuels up, the stuff that he fuels up with. I wonder what happened in the White House with all of that white powder that they had. I wonder what happened. But, you know, so he walks off a stage, so he finishes his thing. Goes. So I'm imitating him. And they said, Donald Trump should not be talking about Joe Biden can't finding his way because he could not find his way off the stage. Let me tell you, these stages have, in fact, this is the worst stage I've ever seen. This actually, Joe, come on, your budget. It's Joe's budget. I don't see stairs of this. But usually, I don't see stairs. Oh, good. Okay. It's a very interesting little question. But we could jump down. He wouldn't be able to get down. I can jump down, I promise you. But so they put on television that, I'm doing the little thing, and it's fun. But it's always dangerous. I tell people, it's always dangerous to do that. I imitate his speaking sometimes, and then they put it on. Have you heard Trump speaking? They put me on imitating. They are the worst. They're the most dishonest people. And we need an honest press. We need strong borders, and we need good elections. We need paper ballots. Today you have watermark paper. It's very good, very secure. We need paper ballots. We need voter ID. We need 1 day. We don't need elections that go on for 48 days and moving everything around, back, forth, wheelbarrows. They dump wheelbarrows. Do you ever see? We're like a third world country, but we have to have elections, great elections. We have to have a free and fair press. We have to have that. We have to have a border. We have no border. We're being invaded. We have no border. And you need those three things. And the press is a big part of it. And you're not even close because they just get worse. They just get worse. So I just want to tell you that we have an opportunity. This is the most important election we've ever had. We're way up in Georgia. We're way up in every state, just about every state. In your state, in Iowa. I don't know. How many are from Iowa? Yeah, I just saw a great, not that many. I just saw a great poll from Georgia. I just saw a great poll coming out of New York, coming out of California. California was 79 points up. That sounds like a lot. In Iowa, I think we're 35 or 36 points up, and we broke 50 today for the first time, over 50. Oh, Texas, forget Texas. Texas, we're up by 70. We're up by 70. We don't have to worry about Texas. And, they're spending everything they can on the first couple of states, and they're not doing well. And I just tell everybody, get out and vote. Make sure you get out and vote. Sometimes when you have these big leads. We have a big lead in New Hampshire, too, by the way. And then we go to Nevada, where I think we're going to have 90% almost, maybe more than that. We're going to have a lot. And then we go to South Carolina, where that's her territory. And she's losing by 58 points or something like that. So, that tells you right there. That tells you something. But in Iowa, we're leading very substantially. So the big thing is to get out and vote. We got to make sure that everybody gets out. Doesn't say, well, it's a little cool out. Let's just watch it. And then you say, where's my vote? Because that sets the stage for November, very importantly. When they see this, when they see the kind of enthusiasm, I've never seen enthusiasm more than 16 and more than 2020. I've never seen the enthusiasm. I really believe that, Joe. I've never seen the enthusiasm that we have right now. So it's an honor to be with you. I didn't even know I was going to do this. They kept it secret because they thought I'd call in and tell you. I'd leak it like they do. They leak everything. But it's a great honor. You're a good-looking crowd. I usually don't look at people that are so attractive. I must say, no, usually they're a little older than you, They've been through the wars. Some of them, you haven't been through too many wars, but your people, I always say our party's based on common sense. We're conservative and all, but what we really have is common sense. We need walls. We want low taxes. We want good education. We want a strong military, minor things like that. I want to thank you all very much. It's an honor to be with you. You're going to have a great future, and I think this election will be very, very pivotal for our country. We'll turn it around. We'll turn it around much faster than people think. And with your help, we're going to go into great things. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.